Again, I have to give credit to Jen for giving me the idea, since I completely struck out and had no original thoughts myself. I thought we would start out with something fun. Let's start out with a quiz. And here's, or a game. The game is guess Mark's first car. But hang on to your mute buttons. Don't start guessing yet, because I want to share something with you. I want to apply a little context, give you maybe just a little bit of color. My first car was acquired in 1987. Many things were different in 1987, including myself. So I'd like to show you a picture. Maybe that'll help you guess what you think would be an appropriate first vehicle for someone. So let's hope this works. I have a host disabled participant screen sharing. If somebody could enable me, please.
You're good, Mark.
Okay. Hopefully you can see this screen show.
Enter your...
Do you see that picture?
Yes.
Oh, wow.
Nice hair.
Yeah, so their fellow Toastmasters
Participant
is
ID followed by pound.
photographic evidence.
Otherwise, just press pound to continue.
Somebody's not muted.
That's Jack.
He's on their phone, not muted.
You
Okay,
are in the meeting.
It's Jackie.
All right, I'll wait that out.
We're good.
So there you have fellow Toastmasters. That's photographic evidence that at one point I was indeed cool. Now, not so much. So the question becomes, yep, that's me, 1987. That picture was taken, I believe, in Santa Monica, California. The question becomes, what was this cool dude's first car? Have at it, take a guess.
Volkswagen Beetle. No.
1984 Nissan Maxima.
Ah, you see it in there. Damn it. Didn't work.
Two-tone blue.
All right. Well, so much for that idea. I guess you're not seeing. I didn't share the right thing.
I
Put
thought
it in full screen.
Santa Monica, it would be a Ferrari or one of those.
This is what I should have. This is what I. No, that's not it.
There you are.
Okay, you only see the slide of me.
Yes.
Okay. Well, all right. So much for that idea. But yes, it was a 1984 Nissan Maxima two-tone blue.
Ooh.
Where is the? Now I'm missing the one picture I wanted to show, but there's a few pictures of this beauty. Now, the goal here was I was trying to fake you all out, because based on that picture, you would assume I probably had like a cool car, a muscle car, a Camaro, something like that. But no, I had one of the quintessential 80s vehicles. I mean, look at that thing. That thing is so damn boxy. It's practically a K car. I know some of you remember what K cars was. And take a look. Look at this shot through the sunroof at that luxurious interior. Anyway, fellow Toastmasters, that was my first car. And as you have an opportunity to speak today, I'm hoping that you will share what your first car was. And if you have a picture, hold it up for the camera. If not, maybe share it if you can in a screen show. Maybe you'll do a little bit better than I did. So we'll proceed by introducing our job holders this morning. We'll start off with our word master, Sylvia Baptiste. Sylvia.
Morning. The word today, I kept it very simple. I surveyed my son at home here and said, theme is first cars. What is the word I could use for the day? And he said, lemon. So that's what I did. I will put it up in the chat section. Lemon, a vehicle that is found to have numerous or severe defects not readily apparent before it is purchased. Used both informally and meaning a vehicle that proves to be defected, imperfect, unsatisfactory, with more meaning of in various states that consumers are protected against the lemon law. So I thought that was pretty good. Easy word, but it has a lot of different meanings. Thank you.
All right, thank you. And hopefully we'll be successful in making lemonade out of those lemons this morning. What was your first car, Sylvia?
Oh, I was hoping you wouldn't ask because I can't remember. Is that sad? I drove a Falcon, a Plymouth Falcon that was my parents for many years going to college. Then when I got married, I think we bought a Cavalier.
All right, thank you. Our master this morning, the club mom, Jackie Kenny. Jackie.
Good morning. Oh dear. Okay, I guess I need to mute one and use.
Now you're completely muted.
This is going to be difficult, I guess. For some reason, I have no audio this morning, so I couldn't hear any of you until I turned my phone on. Anyway, I will be listening for ahs and ums and restarts and double uses of a word, and I'll give you a report at the end of the meeting.
All right, thank you. What was your first car, Mom? You're muted again.
It was a Datsun. I think it was a 66, but I'm not positive. Not a lemon, a very nice little car.
All right, thank you. Our grammarian this morning, Kate Banks. Kate.
Good morning. Thank you, Mr. Toastmaster. I'll be listening for our grammar. I've started already. My mother's lovely father gave me his car upon passing, and I had it for 2 minutes. It felt like it was a Cavalier that someone else hit. Unfortunately, I was fine. It was my senior year in high school. It was very sad to lose that beautiful red Cavalier. So, yeah. Thank you, Mr. Toastmaster.
All right, thank you. I'd like to pause momentarily to acknowledge a guest that has joined us. Is it Kinga? Am I saying it correctly? All right, well, maybe we'll come back to you a little bit later so we can get to know you a little bit better. Our jester this morning is Jill Roaring. Jill.
Good morning, Mr. Toastmaster and all of our guests and all our other Toastmasters. I have 3 different jokes here. I'm trying to figure out which one is the best. I think I'll do the long one. I couldn't find any jokes about first cars. I did, however, find jokes about fast cars, which I think most of us want a fast car for our first car anyhow. So the picture I have behind me is my 78 Ford T-Bird, which was not actually my first car. That was the first one I bought. I'll try and get a picture up of the first one I drove. Anyhow, here's the joke. A hip young man goes out and buys the best car available, a 2005 Bugatti Veyron 16.4. It is the best and most expensive car in the world, and it sets him back $1.24 million. He takes it out for a spin, and while doing so, stops for a red light. An old man on a moped, both looking about 90 years old, pulls up next to him. The old man looks over the sleek, shiny surface of the car and asks, "What kind of car you got there, sonny?" The young man replies, "A 2005 Bugatti Veyron 16.4. It cost $1.24 million. "That's a lot of money," says the old man, shocked. "Why does it cost so much?" The moped driver asks, "Can I take a look inside?" "Sure," replies the owner. So the old man pokes his head in the window and looks around. Leaning back on his moped, the old man says, "That's a pretty nice car, all right." Just then the light changes. So the guy decides to show the old man what his car can do. He floors it, and within 30 seconds, the speedometer reads 320 miles per hour. Suddenly, he notices a dot in his rearview mirror. It seems to be getting closer. He slows down to see what it could be, and suddenly, whoosh, something whips by him, going much faster. What on earth could be going faster than my 16.4, the young man asks himself. Then ahead of him, he sees a dot coming toward him. Whoosh! It goes by again, heading the opposite direction. It almost looked like the old man on the moped. Couldn't be, thinks the guy. How could a moped outrun a Bugatti? Again, he sees a dot in his rearview mirror. Whoosh! Kablam! It plows into the back of his car, demolishing the rear end. Young man jumps out, and good grief, it is the old man. Of course, the old moped and the old man are hurting for certain. He runs up to the dying old man and says, "You're hurt bad. Is there anything I can do for you?" The old man groans and replies, "Yes, unhook my suspenders from your side view mirror, please." Mr. Toastmaster.
Thank you very much, Jill. Our quote master this morning is Beth Banks. Beth.
Thank you. Good morning, Toastmaster. I found a few quotes that have to do with cars. The first one is from Jay Leno, who anyone knows cars, even me, I know Jay Leno has a lot of very nice cars. Nissan is designing a car that will read the driver's mind. I already know what I'm going to do. I want a car that will read the other guy's mind. One anonymous quote is, "Good cars get you from point A to point B. Great cars just get you into trouble." From Bob Talbert from the Detroit Free Press, "The problem with traffic is that the people of today are driving the cars of tomorrow on the roads of yesterday." Thank you, Mr. Toastmaster. And
Thank you.
my first car was not a lemon. The first car that I remember buying was a bright orange Vega. I don't really know why I chose bright orange, but everyone could see me coming, that is for sure. Thank you.
Thank you, Beth. Our timer this morning, Larry McKenzie. Larry.
Thank you, Mr. Toastmaster. My role this morning will be the timer, and for your times today, I am going to be using my first car, which was a 1974 Mercury Cougar, and it was green. So that will be your green light for today. On table topics, you have a 1.5 minute, where you'll receive the green light, 1.5, and 1:45 you will receive the yellow, and 2 minutes you will receive the red. On our speeches, if I'm told otherwise, they will be 5, 6, and 7. So 5 you will see the green, and then you might see this lemon here as your yellow, and your red will be this other lovely looking car. And for our evaluators, it will be 2 to 3 minutes, 2 minutes, 2:30, and 3 minutes. Mr. Toastmaster.
Thank you, Larry. Our gesture master this morning is Larry Eggert. Larry.
Morning, Mr. Toastmaster. Yes, I am the other Larry. I'll be your gesture master today. I'll be looking for subtle gestures. I'm kind of limited, I think, to either hand movements or head or eyes, so I'll be watching very closely for any of those and be reporting back at the end of the meeting. Mr. Toastmaster.
And your first car, Larry? Couldn't have just been a police car.
No, actually, I've had a bad history with my first couple cars. The first one was an orange 1969 Camaro that burned up in the driveway as I changed the starter, which was pretty exciting. My second car, which was my favorite car, was a Chevy Caprice, which I rolled over on Transit Road, which was pretty exciting. So I've had my first two cars were somewhat of a bust, but I've since smoothed it out. So now all my cars are very, very plain. I guess what old people drive, Mr. Toastmaster.
All right, thank you, Larry. Our quiz master this morning is Samir.
Hi, I will be taking notes on everyone's speeches from the meeting and providing a quiz at the end to test how well everyone listened.
And your first car?
My first car was a 91 Accord, which I promptly totaled my first day I had my license.
Ooh.
Actually, it was my dad's originally, so he can probably speak to that as well.
I'm sure he will. Thank you, Samir. Our general evaluator, notice I did not forget her, is Jen Zapla. Jen.
Yes. Well, Mark, you started off pretty well this morning, you know, picking the theme as suggested by your general evaluator. I think you get extra points for that. I will be your general evaluator, so I will evaluate the overall tone of the meeting and let everyone know how I think we did. And my first car is right behind me. It's a 1989 Dodge Colt. Yeah, there's not really much to say. This car didn't have much of anything. It was pretty bare bones. No power steering, no power windows. I didn't even have a radio, guys. I literally had a Discman with some speakers. It was pretty terrible. It would skip whenever you hit a bump, so those Discmen were never a thing either. But it got me around for quite a while, so I'll turn it back over to you, Mr. Toastmaster.
Thank you, Jen. All right, it is time for everyone's favorite part of the meeting, the chance to show your skills speaking extemporaneously. I would like to hand it off to our table topics master, Michael Licata.
Good morning, Mr. Toastmaster, fellow Toastmasters, and our guests this morning. My first car was actually a Cavalier, which I shared with my brother, which to this day I'm surprised neither one of us actually wrecked it. So I was very fortunate. The wonderful defect with my Cavalier was that it didn't have air conditioning. So those few summers were a lot of fun. So I will start this morning with Margot. What was your first car experience like?
Good. Thank you, Mike. We talked about this at work yesterday, and I told you I'd be ready for you. So when Jim and I were in college and we were dating, I was from Albany, he was from Burt, and we needed to find a way to efficiently get between the homes because our parents expected us to split every school break with them, even the 4 days for Columbus Day. So we purchased our first car. It was an orange, and those who know me well know orange is not my favorite color. Volkswagen Dasher. The interesting thing about this car is it was standard. City girl here knew nothing about driving standard. Absolutely nothing. So my husband had to teach me. Now, well, at the time, just my boyfriend, almost fiance. And so he decided to teach me in Ithaca. We went downtown and I was doing fine on all the nice flat streets. Now, if you're not familiar with Ithaca, where Cornell is, where we were, it's actually built on hills, far above Cayuga's waters. He decides it's time for me to take the next step. The main street to get from downtown to Cornell is Buffalo Avenue. Yes, it's almost vertical. And here I am, maybe my second time driving a standard vehicle, trying to get up Buffalo Avenue. I don't remember. I've blocked it out of my memory whether I made it or I made him take over driving. I do not remember it at all. I do remember coming to visit his parents, and we drove from my parents to Batavia. When we got off at Batavia from the thruway and we got into Niagara County, he assured me it was the flattest county in New York State, and so he was able to get me to drive to his parents' house. But that's my story on our orange Dasher, Mr. Table Topics Master. Oh, and it wasn't a lemon. I don't know if I said that.
Thank you, Margot. Our next speaker this morning, one of the great experiences with cars is taking road trips. I've taken a couple with friends. They usually end up with a great story. So I will ask Phil Russell this morning, what did you take your first car on a road trip? What was your first road trip in a car like? Phil Russell.
Well, Mr. Topics Master, how many of you still have your first car? I do. When I was 15, my father went out and bought a 1930 model AA Ford 1.5-ton stake bed truck. And for working in the gas station all those years, we brought it up to the house in Lockport on Gooding Street, backed it in, and that became my project for 16 to get it on the road, which I did. And one of the road trips we took was out on Davison Road. And we were coming back in on Davison Road. We had it all painted up. It was cool. The bed was not on it because that was destroyed. But it was basically the frame of it. And it had 6 wheels, two on each side in the back and 2 in the front. And there was 3 or 4 of us in the front seat, which only really holds 2. And we came in and all the traffic was stopped. It was a parade. It was a parade down Main Street, Lockport. So a cop sitting there said, hey, you got to get in here. He bustled me in, and we're going down in front of the post office in our road trip. They got confused because they had the credits for everybody that was in the parade except for us. And they said, and here comes a vintage model, we're not sure, but it's an old truck with a bunch of kids in it. And we went on out to Outwater Park where they were having a carnival, and we had a great time. So if you want to have a road trip, take your first car at 16. Now, my father knew that everybody wants speed working in a gas station. I'll tell you what, that Model AA, it was a speedster. Top speed, probably about 45 miles an hour. And boy, were you bouncing around at 45 because there was no weight in the back to hold it down. But what would happen is we go down the road and we go at about 25 to 30 miles an hour. And it wasn't too bad of a ride. But usually you got bounced around pretty good if you got it up over 35 miles per hour. And so believe it or not, it's in the garage. You want to see it, you have to come up to Wilson. I haven't had it on the road. It's still got plates on it, still insured, and it's been completely redone, and it's beautiful, but I just haven't had the time to get back at it. Mr. Topics Master.
Thank you, Phil. And I will finish this morning with Dave Licata. What was your first car like? What was your first road trip experience? Dave Licata.
Thank you, Mr. Table Topics Master. My first car was an F-85 Pontiac Cutlass. And my father, he had a lieutenant for everything. So he had a fellow named Bill Kobacker who sold used cars. And before I knew it, I owned this car. I really didn't get to pick it out. It proved to be a lemon on the first road trip. I do have a picture of the car, but it's too sad. It's 4 college-age youth standing in front of the bay of a gas station, and the car is up on a lift because on our return to Florida, the incredibly crazy idea, they put an aluminum engine in this car, and that's nuts. So we're coming back from Florida, and the car's overheating. So all throughout the state of Georgia, which is known for its heat and humidity, we had to leave the heater on the car full blast so the engine wouldn't overheat. Then we had a lot of problems on the way home. The boys wanted to kill me because I kept insisting that they chip in to pay for the repairs. So I pretty much had a new car by the time I got home. So the first road trip was indeed the obligatory trip to Florida, spring break 1968. And I would like to point out that my son Michael's first car is in the driveway, the one that he purchased. So he forgot to talk about his own first car. Thank you so much, Mr. Table Topics Master.
Thank you, Dave. That's the first one I own. The first one that I drove was one of the hand-me-downs. Thank you. So I will turn the meeting over to Sylvia. How did our table topics do with the word this morning?
It didn't do well. Margot snuck it in there, and the other two gentlemen did not use it that I heard.
I think Dave snuck it
I
in.
thought I heard Dave use it.
Dave
I
used
didn't sneak it in. I made it a prominent portion of the talk. Good grief.
Well, I'm not awake. I'm sorry. Didn't hit my coffee yet. Okay, so Margot and Dave, I did not hear Phil. Phil, did you use it? Lemon? No, I didn't think so.
Okay. Thank you, Sylvia. And I will ask Larry McKenzie, how did we do on time this morning for our table topics?
Thank you, Mr. Table Topics Master. This morning, we had 3 contestants. Margot, 1 minute and 52 seconds, qualifies. Phil Russell, 2 minutes and 49 seconds, did not qualify, went over time. Dave Licata, 1 minute, 47 seconds. So Dave and Margot did qualify time-wise. Mr.
Thank you,
Table
Larry.
Topics.
Thank you, Larry. And I will hand the meeting back over to our Toastmaster of the day, Mark.
All right, thank you, Michael. So please cast your vote when it is shown for either Margot or Dave. And I will cast my vote myself. So that first car, that 1984 Nissan Maxima, you have to remember, fellow Toastmasters, I grew up in an area where we had a lot of public transportation. So it's not like there wasn't a measure of independence before then, but having a car really opened up new doors for myself and for my friends. Talk about road trips. We started to take ever increasing lengthy road trips to different places. I can remember the first one probably was to go see the Mets play the Phillies in Philadelphia down the stretch in September, a pivotal game to decide the National League East. And imagine that, the Mets laid an egg that night. I can remember us going to concerts and things like that. What a shock, given how I looked in that picture, right? No surprise there. But I recall in the fall of 1987, the first bit of bad luck struck as it related to that car. We were going to, wait for it, a Def Leppard concert in Nassau Coliseum that evening. And during the late afternoon, I had to take a run to an ATM. I could have went one direction, I could have went the other direction. I chose the other direction, and I got into an accident. Sadly, it was my fault, didn't get hurt. The car got hurt, however. It did get fixed, but needless to say, we never made it to that particular concert. We will move on to the speaking portion of the meeting. I would like to introduce, our first speaker will be Thomas Heldwine, who will be evaluated by Marty Johnston. So Marty, can you introduce Thomas, please?
Thank you, Mr. Toastmaster. Good morning, everyone. Welcome, guests. This morning, Thomas is giving a generic speech, okay? Bear with us. The title is my generic speech today, and I'm just going to be looking for basic Toastmaster skills for him. I'm going to find some things that he can improve on, and I'll report after the meeting. That's all I have, Mr. Toastmaster. Thank you.
All right. Well, I would like to introduce our first speaker, Thomas Heldwine, and his speech title is, I'm sorry, I thought I had it, but I don't. So Thomas, take it away.
Is it 5 to 7?
5 to 7 minutes.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you. The title of the speech is Lessons I Have Forgotten. When we had this topic for today, I went back and I remembered that this vehicle right here was one of the ones that I drove the most before I turned 21 years old. It's a M113 APC, armored personnel carrier, that I had to take care of, and I know every bolt, every nut. I know how the axles work. I knew the grease schedule, everything about this vehicle. And in order for it to be dependable and for all of us to be able to use it, one of the things that I definitely have forgotten over time is discipline. If you expect things to work when you need them and you want your life to go smoothly, well, it takes discipline, and you have to plan all those things out and make sure that you keep up on all the important things. So I started thinking, why did I forget this lesson? And I don't think it's so much that I forgot the lesson as it was the fact that over time, I started taking on more and more video games, television, social media, things that give large amounts of dopamine to the brain. And if you overstimulate the brain with dopamine, common tasks are not enough to give you a sense of reward. There's an actual scientific study where they overstimulated rats, and they overstimulated their dopamine every time they pushed a button. They would push the button over and over and over again until they were exhausted. How many of us do that with our phones or with a game or binge watch a television show? We're just pushing that button. That burns out the dopamine receptors, and the biggest problem with that is then normal tasks aren't enough to get you going. You've been overloaded. And the way I've tried to get over that is to do a dopamine purge. One day every week. Can only be a weekend because I can't get away from a computer Monday through Friday. But one day a week, have no television, no computer, no telephone, no video games. And I'll tell you, those days are really, really boring. Those were some of the worst days at first. Now I look forward to them because they're days where I plan physical activities, mowing the grass, doing things. So if you have the same type of an issue, it may be that you need to just back off on all the pleasure that television, video games, and things like that give you, and just get away from those. Another lesson that I've lost is the best way to be a good learner is to teach as well. And I'm gonna say it is the worst. The worst thing that I did was stop teaching. I used to be a drill sergeant, so I got that military-wise. I had a CCD teacher for children, and that was rewarding, where I had to look up and know my facts before I went in. I also enjoyed one-on-one instruction with people at work, how to use a computer program. What a new employee would come in, and I would love teaching them everything that we did and how to do things. But that all went away, and I haven't done that in quite a while. And I have to try and find something now to replace that. Excuse me. Going back to my vehicle real quick for the end of the speech. An armored personnel carrier is really great because it protects you, and it's very, very heavy. And once it gets going, it doesn't stop. So I will actually say that my first car accident was also in this vehicle. We were traveling at night in what they call blackout drive. And if someone stops in front of you, you have to see their stoplights. Well, there was so much dust, it had covered up their little stoplights. I rammed one of these almost 3-ton vehicles right into the back of another 3-ton vehicle going 30 miles an hour. The impact basically shifted everything. A lot of minor injuries, cuts, scrapes. I bit my tongue. But overall, I enjoyed my first car. It was a wonderful piece of equipment. I would not ever buy another one like it. That the government can do that. With that, those are the two main lessons I seem to have forgotten and need to relearn, are both discipline and teaching. Mr. Toastmaster.
All right, thank you very much, Thomas. Our second speaker this morning is Dr. Gerald Stevens, who will be evaluated by Len Thornton. Len.
Morning, fellow Toastmasters. First off, let me say my first vehicle was a 71 Roadrunner. I loved that car. Unfortunately, I'd seen too many winters before I saw it, and I was constantly rewelding the frame, and it didn't last quite as long as I wanted, or I'd still have it. The biggest lemon I ever had of the 15 cars I've owned was an 87 Chrysler LeBaron. I bought it off a friend, and it had fuel injector problems, air sensor problems, electronics console, all impressive looking. It looked like the cockpit of an airplane. Had a lot of issues there, starter problems. I could not get rid of that car quick enough. That was frustrating. On to Gerald's speech here. Gerald will be speaking for 5 to 7 minutes today, Mr. Timer. He's doing a generic speech. It looks like, this does not look like a pathways evaluation. It looks like our standard evaluation form. The purpose is for the member to present a speech on any topic, receive feedback, and apply the feedback to a second speech. This is actually the evaluation form for a icebreaker. So I'm not sure what exactly category this speech falls into. I trust you have his title, Mr. Toastmaster.
I do, and for what it's worth, it has been identified as Pathways Dynamic Leadership Level 1, Evaluation and Feedback number 1, time 5 to 7 minutes, Mr. Timer, and the project title is A Change of Plans. Gerald Stevens, A Change of Plans.
Mr. Toastmaster, fellow Toastmasters, and our one guest. At this point in our lives, COVID has hit, the pandemic. I feel like a lot of plans have changed, if you're much like me. I had vacation plans, I had convention plans, I had concert plans, all out the window. But not everybody has changed their plans. Some people are brave in the pandemic and doing some traveling. I have a friend who he went to a couple national parks. He went to Yellowstone and he went to the Grand Tetons and also Rocky Mountain National Park with his family. And he posted a picture on Facebook. He's from Michigan. He didn't say where it was. He just said, nice view from a lake. I knew immediately that it was the Grand Tetons. Has anybody ever seen a picture that's brought back a flood of memories? That is what happened to me for sure. And it reminded me of a hike I did in the Grand Tetons. Hopefully I can share my screen here. Let's see. Let's do slideshow from the beginning. This will work. Okay, so in the Grand Tetons, I climbed the middle Teton. And when you're climbing the middle Teton, eventually you're going to get to a point where you see a glacial lake on the side in the saddle. That is the picture that I saw pretty much from a friend of mine, and it was not quite as snowy, but that reminded me of this adventure that I'm going to share with you today. And that's individual pictures of those. Okay, so let's stop share screening here. So it was the summer of '91. I had a job at Yellowstone doing ice cream scooping, and I hiked pretty much all over that place. Nearby is the Grand Tetons, so I did do an adventure there. I was pretty fit at this point in my life. I just did a marathon a year before, did Army basic training a couple months before, so I could hike like the wind. My friend Damon came to me on a drop of a hat, and we went and did this hike up the Middle Teton. So the plan was to go up, starting from the meadows, and go up the Garnet Canyon, see that lake, and head up to the Middle Teton. But when we started hiking, we hiked for a while, and we got into this boulder field and all kinds of paths. We had no idea where to go. They had these 3 or 4 rocks to mark the trail. You guys have done some hiking, you've probably seen that. But they were all over the place. They were like rabbit trails or deer trails. No idea which way to go. We saw a backpacker heading up. So like, okay, let's follow that guy. So we did. It was hard. It was hot, laborious, kind of boring in the beginning. Then we get up to a saddle, which is in the middle of the 2 mountains. To my left, I see this sheer cliff, very impressive. I see a couple climbers that had flown in on a helicopter to the Tetons. They were sitting in their sleeping bags. So that's kind of interesting. And then I walked over to the edge of the saddle and I looked, huh, where's that glacial lake called Ice Flow Lake? It's not there. This is a problem. So then I talked to the people that flew in and they said, oh, it's on the other side of the mountain. The other side of the mountain. So what was I supposed to do? A change of plans. I decided I'm going to hike to the top of the mountain on my right, called the Grand Tetons. Problem, there's no trail. So we're just climbing up boulder fields. I have some experience in rock climbing, 3 points of contact for safety. And we went, and I was pretty hot because I was on the wrong side of the mountain. So we did this for a couple hours till near exhaustion. And I wasn't angry anymore because I had no energy left. And we got to this point where it's about 200 feet left and we couldn't go any higher. It's like, okay, we did pretty much the whole mountain, not all of it. So erred on the side of caution and I headed back down. And we went and stayed in the meadows overnight. The next day, we took that 13-mile hike all the way up to the middle. This time, went to the left instead of the right, and I didn't follow anybody. Found the trail, made it up to that saddle on the other side of the mountain, and saw that ice flow lake. And then as we went up, it started to snow. So I made it to the top. Amazing 360-degree view. I made lemonade out of lemons this day for sure. I encourage you fellow Toastmasters to get out in nature, something we can do with the pandemic. Do some hiking. Gonna head to Allegheny this weekend. Do a little bit of that there. Get some exercise, breathe some country air. It will refresh your soul. Mr. Toastmaster.
Thank you, Gerald. Our third speaker this morning is Mowgli Raman, evaluated by Ryan Flory. Ryan.
Thank you, Mr. Toastmaster. This morning, I have the pleasure of introducing Moklis, who, as we all know, is a brand new Toastmaster. So he will be reading from one of the Toastmasters manual focusing on his voice variation and gestures in today's speech. I'm going to be looking for your typical feedback during a speech, such as gestures, those voice variations, making sure that he's staying on topic, not using any major filler words. And as we all know, he's not going to be a lemon. So at this point, Mr. Toastmaster, do you have the speech title?
I do have the title. Thank you.
Perfect. And Mr. Timer, it is 5 to 7 minutes. Mr. Toastmaster.
Thank you, Ryan. Fellow Toastmasters, please join me in welcoming Moklis with My Family History. My Family History, Moklis Raman.
Good morning.
Morning.
Good morning. A German tourist goes to France. The intimidated French immigration officer fearfully asks him, "Occupation?" The German says, "No, just visiting." Next, an Englishman goes through Australian immigration. The officer looks at his form and asks him, "Do you have a criminal record?" The puzzled Englishman replies, "Is that still a requirement?" Title of my speech is My Family History and comparing with the world of migration. To me, the world is a very small blue planet, although it looks big when we're in our spot. I want you to consider accepting our human history of migration for a better world and embracing migration for peace, prosperity, and progress of humanity. Mr. Toastmaster, fellow Toastmasters, and wonderful guest, Kinga from Poland. My question to you is, why do people migrate? To escape aggression, oppression, corruption, injustices, domination, exploitation, slavery, etc. Sometimes people migrate just for a better life. Let's examine the current population of the United States. It has about 60% white, non-Hispanic, originating from Europe and the Middle East, for about 200 million people. Hispanic and Latino constitute about 15% at 50 million people. The Black or African American are about 13%, about 40 million. Mua, Asian Americans, are less than 6%. And the sad is the Native Americans and Alaskan Natives consist of just little over 1% at 3 million people. Our total population, January 2020 estimate is 330 million. After pilgrims in 1600, droves of people came from Europe for the New World. Large number of people came for building the transcontinental railway line. Finally, after the Second World War, a lot of Europeans came to America, a land of freedom and opportunity. Maybe I want to ask you again, why do people migrate? To escape uncertainty and bleak future. Personally, through oral history and current records, my ancestors lived in the Mughal Empire, the British Empire's crown jewel colony of India, independent Pakistan, and most recently liberated Bangladesh. Our family migrated from Junglebari, Bangladesh to Assam, India, and then to Lankakala, Bangladesh, and currently are spread around the world, from New Zealand and Australia to Europe, Asia, America, and Africa. Truly, we have become a global melting pot of humanity. Our most reliable records began at the first generation by the name of Khairat Palwan, born in 1625 in Junglebari, Bangladesh. At that time, of course, it was Mughal Empire. Khairat was a small landlord or zamindar and a minister of the local ruler of the Mughal family. After migration to Assam, India in 1770, our 8th generation was born in 1805 in Assam, India. Then the family migrated to Lankakala, Bangladesh due to political and religious tensions. Also, there were difficulties with incompatibilities of Bengalis and Assamese. And this is Lankakala, where my grandfather, Samir Sarkar, and my son Samir is named with the same first name, was born in 1875. And my father was born in 1918 in the same village. As a student, I came to America for education and then got a job at the Eastman Kodak Company. I came to America to embrace its glorious liberty, freedom, justice, and infinite opportunities for honest, hardworking men and women. My father lived his last 11 years in Rochester, New York, and became a proud US citizen. So I can proudly say we are 3-generation Americans, my father, Moa, and my son. My son, Samir, was born in Rochester, New York. Most marriages happen through arrangement within the clan and some love connections. Currently, our home is Niagara Falls, New York, USA. My family history is similar to many families from Europe, Asia, Africa, Australia, and South America. And today, still a lot of people are migrating from Africa and South America to Europe and northern countries of Mexico and USA. I ask you again, why do people migrate? Essentially to escape political, religious, and racial persecution, and to seek peace, happiness, progress, and prosperity. In conclusion, my family history is similar to the growth of worldwide migration. As you see in the map behind me, people have been migrating from region to region for a couple of 100 years or even more. I invite and request you to accept migration as part of our human history and embrace the new with the old as we become one large global family. I want to end with a quotation. Remember always that all of us, and you and I especially, are descended from immigrants and revolutionists by the 32nd President of the United States, Franklin D. Roosevelt. How many of you think positively of migration as part of our human history? You can raise your hand or say yes. Mr. Toastmaster.
Thank you, Moklis. I would like to call for a timers report. Larry, how did our speakers do?
Thank you, Mr. Toastmaster. This morning we had 3 wonderful speeches. Thomas, 5 minutes and 36 seconds. Dr. Gerald, 6 minutes, 49 seconds. And Moklas, 8 minutes and 51 seconds. Thomas and Gerald qualified time-wise. Moklas was over on time. Mr. Toastmaster.
Thank you, Larry. So please cast your vote for Thomas or Gerald when it appears on the screen. So this might come as a surprise to you, fellow Toastmasters, but when you own a car downstate, as I did my first car, which was in Queens, it's pretty rough on the vehicle. Potholes, fender benders, just a whole lot more common than what you would see in this particular part of the state. The next unfortunate moment that occurred with that two-tone blue beauty of mine occurred in 1990. My wife and myself and our young daughter, we moved from Queens to a neighborhood in Brooklyn, neighborhood called Canarsie. And we found a really nice apartment that was across the street from a huge park. It was really pretty awesome setup there. We had a little bit of a backyard we could use. We could walk right across the street, take our daughter to the park. She could play. It was really wonderful. And the best thing was it seemed like there was ample parking there. You see, if you watch Seinfeld and you see the jokes about parking spaces, that's not over the top. That's real when you live downstate. In any event, the whole stretch along Seaview Avenue between the park and where our apartment was, nobody ever parked there. And I thought, wow, this is convenient. I could park right in front of the place. Well, I soon found out why nobody parked there. Evidently, people like to race at night, probably under the influence of whatever. And I came out one morning to find the entire side of that two-tone blue beauty completely wrecked. And that was the beginning of the end. And I ultimately wound up getting rid of that car. So at this moment, it's a little late in the meeting. I would like to propose a toast. This toast is to that beautiful two-tone blue beauty and all of your first loves, your first car. Hear, hear. We will move on to the evaluation portion of the meeting. Our first evaluator this morning will be Marty Johnston. Marty.
Good morning. I thought Tom was going to give us a lemon, but he proved us wrong. Tom started off and he told us what he was going to tell us, and then he told us. He told us about lessons that he has forgotten. And the 2 main lessons were self-discipline and his discontinuation of his teaching career and the effects that it's had on him. Looking at the basics, Toastmaster skills, Tom, you had good eye contact throughout your speech. You used good descriptive language explaining, what you were talking about. You're talking about the overstimulation of the brain from all the electronics and all the gadgets that you've used. You were on point with your message. You had good organization throughout your speech. And you brought it full circle at the end. You told us the 2 main points that you started with at the beginning, and you wrapped it up. A couple suggestions for improvement. I felt that your vocal variety could have used a little bit more vocal variety. I'll give you a couple examples. When you were talking about the 2 tanks, you said you're in your tank, a 3-ton vehicle, and you hit another 3-ton vehicle. You could have actually used your hands like, boom. Imagine that, you're like, boom, like shock. Could show that. And then with your hand gestures, even more so when you're talking about overstimulation of the brain, you could say, oh, in my brain, it was just overstimulated from all the typing and all the keying and all the gadgets and all the games and my eyes were popping out of my head. And, just paint a big picture that way by using hand gestures. And the third thing I would suggest is to engage the audience more. You could have asked a couple questions, and the one main question it would be, and you may have done it, but you could possibly emphasize it more. You could say, has anyone else ever had that feeling where you just feel exhausted and your brain feels like it's coming out of your head? And ask for a show of hands and just pause for a minute, and it'll bring the audience in and make them listen to what you're saying and focus. Thomas, I wish you continued success with Pathways, your journey. I know you've done an outstanding job so far. I think you're leading the pack at one point. I'm very proud of you. Keep working on your preparation and be well, my friend. Thank you. Mr. Toastmaster.
Thank you, Marty. Our second evaluator this morning is Len Thornton. Len.
Mr. Toastmaster, fellow Toastmasters, and especially Dr. Stevens, DTM. As a DTM, I will hold you to a little bit higher scrutiny than I would other evaluations, and particularly because I had the pleasure of evaluating you a few weeks ago. During that speech, I called upon you to stand up so that we could see your gestures and you were more comfortable. You always project so much better when you're standing up, and you did that. Now, one thing I would suggest is find a way to elevate your laptop or your camera so that you're looking straight at it as opposed to looking down to it. And that's just a matter of propping it up. Also, a little bit better lighting might help. Your camera seems a little bit blurry, and I think it's because of a low light condition. If you add more light in the room, bring in a lamp or two, I think it'll make the image really pop and really bring you into our space here. I love that you had props. You had the cane right away. We've come to expect that from you. And you had a PowerPoint presentation. A little hint with that, start the PowerPoint, have it full screen on there before you share your screen. Just eliminates a little of that delay that kind of impedes the flow of your speech. So have that going. A well-organized speech, as always. I didn't see your energy level here. Maybe you're a little bit low on coffee today. Usually you're a little bit more punchy. You're in our face. Your enthusiasm just radiates through. You seemed a little bit somber. I don't know if that was the theme of it. Change of plans, the disappointment. It kind of worked on that respect, but it's a little atypical from what we expect from you. A little bit more humor too. We love your trademark humor. You did have a call to action in your speech. You brought a question here. What would you do if you found yourself on the wrong side of the mountain? Let's see, your eye contact was good, but although you were looking down, and a good finish. You stepped up your energy level there. There was the call to action, and there was a message. As so often in your presentation, there was a message for all of us, and an extremely topical theme for your meeting here, and relevant theme, change of plans. We've all had to deal with a change of plans with COVID. So you brought it home today. Thank you for a wonderful presentation, Mr. Toastmaster.
Thank you, Len. Our third and final evaluator this morning is Ryan Flory. Ryan.
Thank you, Mr. Toastmaster, fellow Toastmasters, and especially Moklis. My family history. When I saw the title, my initial assumption was that we were going to hear about Moklis, perhaps his parents, and then Samir and his generation. But what we actually learned about was several hundred years worth of travel around the globe, which I thought was an incredible way to break it down. He had an engaging and modulated voice, which really helped to keep us moving forward with all the data and information. And what I really liked that you did, Moklis, was include those personal stories and how it related to your family. It really helps us absorb that information, which can sometimes be overwhelming or dry, that we want to turn away from. I would say from the gesture side is really where I would look to make improvements to the speech. Having the globe was a great prop, but having the globe and the phone was a little bit prohibitive because you had to look at the phone, which took away from the gestures that you could otherwise be making as you pass the globe around, or as we talk about different gestures. You had a couple of good moments where you brought that arm up with the globe to show the whole world and really the impact thereof. The map behind you was a great prop just to show how much migration has really happened over the history of our world. But again, I think you were a little bit hamstrung by that phone. So what I would recommend, especially with the technology we have, is perhaps a giant PowerPoint slide that has your bullet points listed there, because we don't see what's on your computer screen, which allows you to be looking at the computer, looking at the audience, but still seeing the notes in front of you. And again, it really brought back so much perspective for us. It moves way back into the 1700s. We're talking India to Bangladesh to the US. And it was really great how you had brought us into your family's life and into your family's heritage and travels from far back than most of us can remember in our lifetimes to even now in present day. I thought it was a great opportunity, and it was, again, a really good personal story that kept us engaged the whole time. So with that, I will pass it back to our Toastmaster.
Thank you, Ryan. Mr. Timer, Larry McKenzie, your final report.
Thank you, Mr. Toastmaster. With my final report, I'd also like to mention my 1974 Mercury Cougar was my baby. I sold that vehicle in 1981 to a wonderful young lady, and I thought that was the end of my vehicle, that I would never see it again. About 2 years ago, or 2 or 3 years ago, over by Ida May Park for the car show on Monday night, I was walking around and I was looking, and there happened to be a 1974 Mercury Cougar green, and I struck up a conversation with the owner of the vehicle, and ironically, it turned out to be the vehicle that I sold to the lady in 1981, and they had picked it up, and so my car came back looking better than it did when I owned it in 1974 to 1981. With that, my timers report. Marty, 2 minutes and 52 seconds. Len Thornton, 2 minutes, 32 seconds. And Ryan, 2 minutes and 25 seconds. All three qualified time-wise. Mr. Toastmaster.
Thank you, Larry. So please cast your vote, fellow Toastmasters, for Marty, Len, or Ryan. So on the topic of first cars, you might have seen, I don't know if it went to me or if it was, I think it was private. One of Eric Schneider's coworkers said his first car was a Ford Fairmount. Our good friend Tom Moran couldn't make it today, but he did share with me an email that his first was a red 1968 Pontiac Firebird. He went on to add that after the third speeding ticket, he lost his license and insurance. No surprise there with a red 68 Firebird. Looking at all of your faces, I'm trying to think if anyone has not shared what their first car was, and I'm not sure we have heard from Carol this morning. Carol, what was your first car? Can't hear you.
Okay, my first car was, this isn't it, but it's the type of car. It was a 1971 Mercury Comet GT. It was red with the black stripe and a non-functional hood scoop. And the only thing is it didn't have power steering and it didn't have air conditioning. But another problem was it was a 1971 with a 1972 dipstick in it. And until I had it for a year when I met my husband, and when he changed the oil, he said there's something not right. It's saying it's not full, and I know it is. So it needed a valve job eventually because it had been overfilled for the first year.
All right, thank you, Carol.
So I didn't share my first car, if I may.
Sure.
My first car was, I don't know the year, probably 1960 or 1950 in Calgary, Canada. That's a cold place. A friend of mine, as another graduate student, donated the car to me. He said, "Do you want a car?" I said, "Sure." He said, "How much can you pay?" I said, $100. He said, "Sure, take my car." It's a very cold place. I don't know if you know, Calgary is like Siberia. You have to hit the engine overnight to be able to start in the morning. More importantly, I could not take the leg off of the gas pedal because as soon as I take the gas pedal off, the car stops running. So I have to continuously balance between, it's a stick shift. So I have to balance between the clutch and the gas to keep it running. And also my first experience of driving over ice. Fortunately, there was nobody around. I just slightly braked, and guess what happened? I went 360 degrees. That was my first lesson too about driving on slippery road. That was my first car. Thank you.
Thank you, Moklis. Ryan, did you tell us what your first car was?
I did not. So my first car was nothing very exciting, but I since the time that I was old enough to get working papers, I always was working. And so my only goal in life at that point was to save up enough money to buy a car that was newer than my dad's. So in 2004, I had saved up enough cash and bought a 2003 Hyundai Elantra. It was nothing exciting, but it was what I could afford, and it was 2 years newer than my dad's car. So at that point, that car lasted me about 5 years that I owned it. Made it to like 120,000 miles, and I had nothing but oil changes. So it was a pretty reliable car that I bought for $6,500 cash, and I got no complaints about it.
Mr. Toastmaster, this is Nancy. My first car was a 1968 Saab, 3-cylinder, 2-stroke. You put the gas and the oil in the same tank, 8 gallons of gas with a quart of oil. In my trunk was always a case of spark plugs. For all that I saved with gas, I paid for in clutches and spark plugs. So I had a case of spark plugs and a gapper in my trunk. And when the car started to go, I would stop, change the plugs, and start up again. We used to get sometimes 50 miles to the gallon. And that's back when gas was 63, 65 cents. I'm sorry, 36. Dyslexic here. 36 cents, 35, 36 cents. So my paycheck was a lot better at the end of the week. However, than some of the sports cars. However, the clutches were very expensive.
All right, thank you, Nancy. Eric, you want to share with us your first car?
Yes, I do. My first car ever was a 97 Saturn. I bought the car when the old Glen Campbell was still on transit near Eastern Hills. And I got the car when it was over 88,000 miles on it. So that car got in some good use. About a few months breaking in with the car, I had to drive my mother to work because my dad had her car and my dad's car was in the shop because he hit a raccoon and nicked the radiator fluid and he couldn't drive the car. So my mother told me to not go down Old Beatty Road toward off of Rapids because it's known to be a deer activity. So stupid me, where did I go down to? Old Beatty Road. And lo and behold, here comes a deer right in front of me. I hit the brakes and I hit the deer. And the deer went flying and it was dead after impact. So I'm like, oh, shoot, I shouldn't have gone down that road. So the first person I called was my mother. And I told my mother what happened. I got into an accident. She goes, I told you not to go down that road. And I'm like, yeah, I know. So I had called the police department, had to drag the deer off the side of the road. Nice dent in the front of the car. Surprisingly enough, it wasn't too much damage. The windshield wasn't hit. The car was still running fine, but lesson learned, do not go down Old Beatty Road at 5 in the morning when they're known to be deer activity. Mr. Toastmaster.
Thank you, Eric. I'm really loving the level of participation and enthusiasm. Marty, you have a picture you want to share. Can't hear you, Marty.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can.
Okay, I'm going to screen share. I just got to bring up the. Okay, let's screen share with you. Hold on. Okay, this was my first car. Can you see it?
No.
No? What did I do wrong?
You have to click share screen and pick the
I
particular.
did on the bottom. Let me go back. Hold on a second, please. Trying to bring the icon up on the screen, the screen share. For whatever reason, it doesn't come up. Anyway, my first car was a 1979 Chevy Chevette. It was silver. And it was not a lemon. I bought it from my sister. I think I bought it for $1 or something like that. There was a deal in the family she had with my dad or something at the time. Anyway, I had it I think it was my freshman or sophomore year when I was at Brockport State. And while I was at Brockport, I had a couple beagles. And you know, when you think of a beagle, you might think of Snoopy and Snoopy and the Red Baron. Long story short, when I came home after that semester, I moved out of the apartment where I was living off campus, and I had to bring the beagles and the doghouse. So guess where the doghouse ended up? On top of the Chevette. I strapped it on top of the Chevette, and I drove down Route 31 home from Brockport. So it was Marty and the Silver Baron driving down 31. What a sight that must have been, huh? Give me about 10 seconds. I really would love to show you the car. For whatever reason, I can't. Here we go. So I clicked on screen share. I'll try it one more time, and if it doesn't come up, it doesn't come up. Can you see it now?
No.
Okay. All right. Anyway, thank you for your time. That's my story. Thank you for your time.
All right. Thank you, Marty. Last but not least, real quickly, our guest Kinga from Poland. Can you share with us what your first car was or is? Oh, we saw you for a moment. Can't hear you. I think you may be muted.
Hello.
Hi.
Yes, greetings from Poland.
Greetings.
Yeah, we have a wonderful, very warm day here in my city. And my first and only car was when I was doing my driving license, and that was called Punto, I think, and it was very long ago. And so far, I didn't use the car at all, so I don't have a car now, and I don't use it. I don't need to.
All right. Well, thank you for sharing, and thank you for joining us. All right. At this point, I would like to turn the meeting over to our general evaluator, Jen Zapla. Jen.
Thank you, Mark. So I just want to say again, you chose an excellent theme. It seems like everyone was very engaged in the theme and sharing with you. And Kinga, just for your edification here, we're all from Western New York, and you have to have a car to go city where there's not much else in the way of public transportation and things are a little too spread out. So unfortunately, although there have been times in my life where I wish I didn't have a car, having a car here tends to be necessary for most people. People are very engaged in the meeting. It seems like we've had some sticky mute buttons, guys, like at the beginning, and I hear some now too. Just make sure that you are using your mute button. I know Larry and Len try to do a good job of muting people when they haven't done so themselves, but just be aware. I think we've actually done better in the past than we're doing today. So keep that in mind. For my speaking and evaluations comments, well, the evaluators are really what I'm here to evaluate. So I have some comments today. I was thinking about this from the standpoint of general meetings at work. You know, I go into a meeting at work and sometimes I have higher level managers on my meeting. You know, I have to make decisions with them and then we'll be presenting to another group. And to me, that's what the speaking and evaluations are really about. That speaker and the evaluator, it's the employee and the manager, and they need to work out and get on the same page beforehand. And whose responsibility is that? It's both people's responsibility. It's the speaker's responsibility as much as it is the evaluators, because when you're presenting to another group of people, you want to come across with a unified front. And I think anytime we're not coming across with a unified front, it reflects on us, not necessarily on another person. So I just want everyone to keep that in mind and try to do a better job of communicating from a speaker's point of view with your evaluator. And if you're an evaluator and you're not clear on what you're doing, then that's your responsibility to find out. So that's my one big comment for our evaluators today. I think that our evaluators all had feedback for the speakers today. Marty, the one thing I want to comment on your evaluation, you started off with a sentence that I was a little taken aback by, and it was, you thought that Thomas was going to deliver a lemon. And I thought that was not necessarily what I think of Toastmasters as being. You know, we're here to really give positive feedback, and I think we should always be expecting the best of our speakers. So I was a little taken aback by that comment, but again, you did have some positive feedback for Thomas in there. After that, I would just caution you against starting off that way in the future. Otherwise, I think both Len and who is our other evaluator? Why didn't I write it? Ryan, there you are. I see you. Len and Ryan did both give positive and feedback, and they also gave constructive feedback. Thank you, Ryan. I'm losing my words today, guys. I should have taken more notes. So yes, work on the sticky mics, nice theme. Everybody was engaged, and I hope everyone had fun today. And Mark, I'm gonna turn it back over to you. Oh, I didn't give you feedback, but you have done an excellent job keeping the meeting moving and calling on everyone. I liked that you called on people that did not have roles and made sure everyone had a chance to share. I think that was excellent. And I will turn it back over to you to call for reports. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Jen. All right, I will call for an Masters report. Jackie, how did we do today?
Thank you, Mr. Toastmaster. I did not hear a lot of lemons this morning. I did, however, hear Larry using "and" to connect a lot of thoughts. Larry McKenzie, that is. Jen had 2 ahs. Marty had the starting sentences. Phil had "it was a" 2 times in a row, restarts, and also, and so, and so. I also hear Margot using "yeah" as a kind of filler in between her thought processes. So that might need to come under control. And Beth had an and that's my report.
All right, thank you, Jackie. Our grammarian, Kate, how did we do?
Thank you, Mr. Toastmaster. What a fun journey we had this morning. And after I'd had some coffee, I could think again about vehicles. I did have a $500 lemon that we won't speak of right after college, but in college, where I went to the Adirondacks, the best car I ever had was a Jeep Wrangler. I loved that. Dark green, tan, hardtop. Needed it in the mountains there and in the snow. It was safe and reliable for New York winters. To our guest, Kinga. Very snowy here in this part of New York. And drivers of Jeeps always wave at each other. For anyone who doesn't know, the Jeep wave, kind of like what motorcycle riders wave at each other. So that was always fun. In any case, those who spoke the longest gave me the most fodder this morning. So Mark, you always have fantastic language, quintessential, measure of independence. Laid an egg, I never have heard that reference. Wait for it, needless to say, for what it's worth. Weaknesses, could have went, could have went, could have gone, and real quickly, but that was all I noticed. Thomas, I loved your title, Lessons I Have Forgotten. Very nice pace today. Strong words, dependable, discipline, dopamine receptors, dopamine purge, watch the weakness, getcha. To 'em. Got that military wise, was choppy, and real quick, just drop that altogether, unnecessary. Dr. Stevens, strong words, flood of memories, glacial lake, hike like the wind, drop of a hat, meadows, boulder field, laborious, sheer cliff, exhaustion, and wrapping up with refresh your soul. That was beautiful. You did say for sure, for sure, for sure. Watch that. Mokles, strong language too, of course. Repression, persecution, aggression, domination, exploitation, liberated, global melting pot of humanity, moi. And I love that you ended with peace, happiness, progress, and prosperity. And you used quotation instead of quote. Watch it, you said specially a lot instead of especially. Marty, I love the visual with Snoopy and the Red Baron. That's great imagery. What a story. I can only picture that. You'll have to get that picture for us in the post toasties. Len, strong, scrutiny, particularly, project, elevate, bring you into our space, eliminates, impedes, punchy, radiates, somber, topical, relevant. Watch little bit. I stopped at 5. Little bit, little bit, little bit. But you gave Mark a run for his money on language today. Ryan, I loved initial assumption, engaging and modulated voice, absorb, prohibitive, impact, hamstrung, perspective, and heritage. Watch Gunna and Natcha. Gunna, Thatcha. Those were your crutches. Eric, I loved lo and behold and dear activity. I've never heard that, but I'm like, watch, I'm like. And folks, if you didn't know it already, the deadliest animal in America is the deer. Watch it for your cars. Deadliest animal in America. Pests, snakes, bears, wolves, it's the deer. Jen, I loved edification, beforehand, unified, taken aback, watch really, and you know, I heard as a weakness. Thanks for letting me have a long report on this meeting as we go over a little. Thanks, Mr. Toastmaster.
Thank you, Kate. Are you sure that's it? Just kidding, just kidding. All right, our gesture master, Larry Eggert.
Thank you, Mr. Toastmaster. Let's see. Mark, first, air traffic control. I like the headphones. You look at calling planes in. You also had the look of a lawyer. I saw the hands going. Whenever I had to testify in a trial, when the lawyers started with the hands, I knew something was up. And then when you shuffled papers, you looked like a little bit like a banker. I saw as you shuffled some papers. Jill had some intense eye rolls as she talked. And there goes my notes. I love the accent, Jill. The southern accent during the jokes. That was pretty cool. Whoosh and kaboom. I thought that was pretty good. Let's see. Margot used hands as she went up and down hills. Margot, I can tell you, I taught my wife how to drive a standard shift, and we got stranded on that huge hill on Pine Street in front of LaPorte. So you can see how big that hill was. Phil had excellent use of eyebrows, and he gave the thinker pose, which I thought was very good. And he did the bouncing thing as he bounced around in his 1930 truck which I have to see, by the way, Phil. That sounds like a pretty cool vehicle. Dave Licata, some finger pointing. Thomas, very unique use of your background. Not too many people can say they had intimate knowledge of a M113 armored personnel carrier, let alone having an accident with it. Oh my God. But you used it well because you kept pointing back to it as you talked. Dr. Stevens did great with his props, and also he had, as always, a good use of his hands. Ryan had some hand wringing, which was interesting. As he talked, he had his hands like this, and what's that thing where you do with the kids, where you do the finger with the church and you open to see all the people? That was kind of what Ryan was doing. It was kind of interesting to watch. And last but not least, Mokless had the whole world in his hand. Thought that was an excellent way to use a prop. Mr. Toastmaster.
Thank you, Larry. Our quizmaster, Samir.
Yeah, so it was a great set of speeches today. My first question will be, what speed did Philip Russell's car begin to bounce at?
45.
25.
25, that's the right answer.
It could go faster. Okay, yes.
What current condition is Mark's first car now in?
That was ruined.
Total?
Correct.
Total.
Correct, it was totaled. Thomas, what did his first car weigh?
3 tons.
Nice. And Gerald, what type of lake was he looking for?
Glacial lake.
Excellent. And for Mokless, how long did the modern period of migration start or last? Or approximately when did it start?
1500s.
Correct. Yeah, it was a great meeting, Mr. Toastmaster.
Thank you, Samir. Last but not least, Sylvia, our word master, you served us up a softball with a word like lemon. We could have done better than we have, but give us your report, please.
It would, take off a little more. Jackie, Kate, Marty a few times, Dr. Gerald once, Len, I think you might have did it twice, but I got one written down here. Jen once, Larry McKenzie once, you yourself a couple times. But the lemon didn't work. People did not buy lemon for your first car. A lot of people have done that, or they figured their first car was a lemon, and they always upgrade the next car, the second vehicle. Just to give you a little story, I will not be at the next couple meetings. I'm doing a road trip to California. that my choice, but in this conversation of the last 2 days, I lost my 2019 Nissan Rogue to my college student because his truck would not take the trip. And he's going to have my vehicle, and my husband's going to take his truck, and then I'll have my husband's vehicle. But it's like, but I like that car. So I lost it in the bet here, but my husband did promise me I could get another one in another year. So anyway, we'll see you in a couple weeks, folks. Good meeting.
Thank you. Safe travels.
Thanks.
I'd like to turn the meeting over to our president, Eric. Are you still with us? Would you like to announce the winners today or share in announcing the winners?
I'd be happy to give you all the winners today. Thank you, Mark, for a wonderful meeting today. And my final thought here is, if you guys see a deer, make sure you hit the brakes. Don't be like me, who hit a deer and actually paid the price on hitting it. So, fun tip for you for today. Dave, I see you have your hand raised. Is Dave on?
I want you to check in with our guest because she didn't tell us what city she's from in Poland.
Ah, yes. Kinga, our guest today. Can you tell us where you're from again?
Poznań, between Warsaw and Berlin.
I want to tell our guests this morning that I spent 11 days in Poland on tour, and it was the best 11 days of my life. And I am married to the former Annette Badowski. I also want to share with you that the biggest city near Lockport is Buffalo, New York, which is second only to Chicago in Polish Americans. And we want you to come visit us for Dingus Day next year.
Yeah, hope to visit. Well, I think that I will visit you next week, of course.
All right, that's great. But don't forget, we're only 19 miles from Niagara Falls, and everybody in Europe wants to see Niagara Falls. So when you arrive here in Western New York, you're going to get the best tour ever.
Thanks a lot.
Yes.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you for joining us, Ken.
Thank you, Kinga. Did you enjoy the meeting today?
Thanks for very warm welcoming me, and see you next week.
Thank you.
We'll see you next week. Thank you so much for joining us today, Kinga. All right, on to our winners.
Wonderful meeting with wonderful speeches and wonderful evaluations and great atmosphere, and hope to see you next week.
Thank you so much, Kinga. We'll see you next week. All right, on to our winners today. Our best table topic speaker is Margot Stubittner. Congratulations, Margot. Our best evaluator this morning is Ryan Flore. And last but not least, our best speaker today. Get ready, folks. It's our own Dr. Gerald Stevens is our winner this morning for best speaker. All right, are there any final announcements before we close up the meeting this morning?
Yes,
Kate?
I do, Eric.
Okay, go ahead, Phil.
Am I the only person that has registered for the virtual international convention for Toastmasters, or did anybody else see that email?
I did. I registered.
It's in an email, so register. Go on virtual. It looks like it's going to be pretty cool. It doesn't cost anything. All you have to do is go in, and they're going to have it televised. And I thought it would be great. They're going to do the international speech contest, the whole 9 yards. So it should be a lot of fun.
Yeah, they've charged for this in the past before COVID, so this is a bargain.
We also have somebody from District 65 who is in the semifinals.
Okay.
Speaking of television, I think it would be great if everybody watched our YouTube channel and observed themselves in particular to see what your camera angle looks like and how you appear on screen. It's a good teaching tool to look at that YouTube video.
I agree, Mom.
Absolutely, I agree also. And you all should have received emails for the schedule for the next several weeks. Marty is our Toastmaster next week, and his theme is mini summer getaways. So get ready and take a look at the schedule on our website so you can see what's coming up. And see you at social hour if you can make it tonight.
Lest Dr. Stevens, who I guess is gone now, think I don't put my money where my mouth is. I elevated my camera and I'm now standing up and walking around. So I'm going to try and give my next speech actually standing, as I've been imploring him to do, and see if I can master the art of that myself. And who would like to see, I have the launch queued up. The Perseverance Mars rover launch happened during our meeting. Would anybody like to see that? I have it down to like 7 seconds on the countdown.
Sure.
Let me see if I can.
Excuse me.
Oh, there we go.
This is a guy called Everyday Astronaut. He does nice commentary on all the technology. And it's going to take about a year and a half to get there.
En route to Mars?
Yeah, it's nuclear powered. Doesn't rely on solar panels. Yeah, the rover itself, that is.
Is this the one that has a helicopter?
Yes.
It's going to fly around?
Yeah, it's going to fly a drone around too, yeah.
Wow.
How long does this take to get there, Len? This one?
It'll take months.
Yeah, it's like February of 21, I believe it'll get there.
It's hard to watch a launch and when you're my age and not hear Walter Cronkite in your head.
It's true.
That probably gets better gas mileage than my 1974 Mercury Cougar did.
This is getting there with a Universal Launch Alliance Atlas V rocket, which are the two big, Universal Launch Alliance are the two big contractors. I think Boeing and Lockheed Martin. As opposed to Tesla, which seems to launch every couple days.
Man, that's
Orbital
a beautiful
ATK is
sight.
also part of them.
That's a beautiful sight.
Yes.
I try and catch every rocket flight I can. Fascinated by them.
Alrighty. Well, thank you all so much for a wonderful meeting. Stick around for post toasties, and I will bid you all a wonderful Thursday morning. Enjoy yourself, and we'll see you all next week. See you at social hour tonight.
You too,
Right
Eric.
now, this meeting is officially adjourned.